Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy basketball waiver wire show every Thursday at 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific. We're here for NBA Week 3, but waiver wire Week 2, and I'm here with Casey Vlad to the Bone Scheinvold and Ross the Boss.
Hey, everybody, I'm Ross the Boss, and I want to talk fantasy sports and NBA waiver wire Week 2 with you, cowboy.
Love it, Ross. You sounded like you're in some kind of extra good mood. You just look good. You look happy.
I'm always in a good mood. Dan, I never get in bad moods. What are you talking about, Ross the Boss? Bad mood?
Isn't this great? Greg's going to be so happy. I riled you up right from the start. Okay, guys, the way we're doing this, now I missed last week, so I'm the one playing catch-up, but I'm going to act like I'm the host here. So we're going to do 60% and under rostership in Yahoo. We're going to talk about, though, some bargain bin people that are way, way down low that you can scoop up that are going to be good, too. And then we're going to get into talking about who we are seeing as overvalued or undervalued. We'll get into that soon. Ross, we're going to start with you. Who are some of your top pickups, 60% and under?
Okay, so I have a whole new motivation thing this week I want to tell the audience. So instead of looking like points scored and assists, rebounds, blah, 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 I'm looking at actually minutes played, because if you don't play, you can't score. Correct? Is that how it works?
That's correct.
Does that work in sports? If I play in the NFL, if I'm on the sidelines the whole game, how many fantasy points do I get, Casey? 0.
I've been doing that my whole life.
Why do you always ask me a question and then answer it? I don't understand.
Wow, because you're my guy that doesn't talk. I'm like Penn, and you're like Penn and Teller. There you go. So I'm looking at just not what they do like when they're playing, but how much time they get to play. Because I feel that that's a huge part of the fantasy sports people don't look at, is how much time your guy is out there playing. So that all being said, my number one pickup this week in the guard position is Joe Harris of Brooklyn. He plays 30 minutes a game. He averages 12 points a game. He gets 4 rebounds. He gets assists. I mean, Brooklyn is a team that I don't think Irving's coming back. I don't know when he's coming back. I mean, I haven't heard anything about him in 2 weeks since the season started. It's been like silence. So Joe Harris gets all his minutes. That's 30 minutes a game on Brooklyn, who has Durant and Harden. And I feel that Joe Harris is a guy that's going to benefit from that because he's going to be open, taking shots. So I like Joe Harris this week. I think it's a good pickup. It could be a streaker. We'll see what happens. But he's been playing great. And I like to hear what everybody else likes.
Listen, I had Joe Harris at the top of my list, too, because if you go to Yahoo and you go to rostership and you just go under 60%, the first name that pops out of you was Joe Harris. He's 56% owned right now. And he's a guy who he could get picked up and owned the rest of the season. That's the thing I'm looking for early in the season, is who are some guys to pick up that you're not likely to cut again. Now, there are going to be
and that's the thing. I mean, there's some guys. I wish, like last week, you missed us last week, but we were naming guys off, and all the guys we mentioned are now way over 60%. I mean, everybody that Casey and I were like going down the list and saying, I can't believe this guy's averaging a triple, this guy's having a double-double, and this guy's doing this and playing 30 minutes again. There were a lot of people that weren't paying attention during the first week, and Casey and I benefited from it, so we'll see what happens.
That's great. And meanwhile, just for the viewers out there, you got to make sure that you're paying attention, because people are going to stop paying attention, and they're going to make mistakes, and then there's going to be guys available again. So you got to keep on it throughout the year. Speaking of which, since I'm talking to you guys out there, if you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and put your comments below. We love to have conversations with you about fantasy sports or other things if you want. Now, here's another guy on my list. You guys know I was high on him because I drafted him. Nerlin's Noel. I'm not saying he's going to win you leagues, but the fact is, this is a guy who gets blocks and steals at such an efficient pace that if he starts to get big numbers at any point in time, he could make a huge difference, and at worst, he's going to help you. Now, the problem with Nerlin Noel so far is he hasn't played much. He's been injured the whole time, but now is the time to scoop him up. His ownership is going to go well over 60% soon. I don't think you're going to see him on the wire much in most leagues. Casey, who do you have?
If we're looking at the guard position, there's 2 guys that jumped out at me outside of Joe Harris. One is and one is for the 76ers, and that's Matisse Thybulle. He qualifies at both guard and forward, so I'm not sure where you would play him predominantly. But as as I know Dan agrees, somebody who qualifies at both guard and forward, the versatility they provide is great. And he's at 54%. He's only playing 24 minutes a game. I don't know if that's enough by your standards, Ross, but we're talking over a 50% field goal percentage, perfect a high free throw percentage, and averaging over 2.5 steals per game.
Wow, that's good.
Which when you're looking at the defensive metrics, he's kind of one of those 3-and-D players, which can be really, really good for fantasy. The other one is the Chicago Bulls, is Alex Caruso, who plays guard for them. He's getting 28 minutes a game, again, shooting 47%, 87% from the line, and getting 2.5 steals per game to go with decent assist numbers as well. So I was looking at guys, maybe not the volume scorers, but more for those guys who give you those peripheral counting stats, the defensive stats.
Well, I'm going to give you a little sneak peek because Matisse Thybulle is somebody that I think people are having an underreaction to his numbers. I understand that he's not playing a lot of minutes, but this is what he's done his whole career. He doesn't play a lot of minutes, and he just gets tons of steals and blocks. It's a very cheap pickup that's going to pay off for you, so I think you scoop him up right away. I do have one other player to mention.
I have a couple too, but go ahead.
I just want one. I don't want anyone stealing my thunder on this one because Kawhi Leonard is sitting at 54%. I don't know when he's coming back. I haven't even checked that much, but I do know
there's good news on Kawhi Leonard. He is at the stadium during the games. He is at the stadium. He's not at home. He's not at home. He's at the stadium. So that's good news.
Listen, you got to get on it now, this week. You pick him up now because you will not get him after this week.
Hold on. Let me do it right now. Wait, he's already taken to my league. And some guy named Dr. Dan Ratner owns him. Right. Who is that guy?
That's right. He's a really renowned psychologist and excellent with fantasy sports.
I got it. I mean, I don't know who this guy is, but I'm going to make an offer that he can't refuse.
All right, Ross, you were chomping at the bit. Give us some others.
So Anfernee Simons plays for Portland. He's the backup for Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard's playing awful. I don't know. The whole Portland team is bad.
Guess who else owns that guy? This guy.
I'm sure he does. So Anfernee Simons, he's actually averaging 14 points a game, 2 rebounds, 2 assists, but he's getting more playing time, and he's hitting like close to 50% of his shots. I mean, he's playing great. Damian Lillard is not playing well. So if you want to trade for Damian Lillard, it's a good time to do it right now because his stock is way down. It's not the player from last year. It's a whole different guy. I don't have him. I was worried about him. I feel he's going to be traded by the end of the year. But I love this Simons kid. I think it's a great pickup right now. And if you can get him now, because Lillard could be traded, especially if Portland can't be in the playoffs this year. So we'll see what people do and what they think. But I love Anfernee Simons. Love his name, too.
Anfernee, yep.
He's one of the best Anfernees of all time, but he's not at the top. We know Anfernee Hardaway is at the top.
And another guy that's in there that Houston said, we're not going to play you, but we want to trade you. Of course, there's no offers on him yet. They're like waiting by the phone. It's like it says radio silence. Is John Wall. And John Wall, when he plays, he averages over 20 points a game. I know his percentages aren't the greatest. But again, John Wall, he's healthy, he's fine, he's ready to go. Houston just needs to trade him. As soon as they trade him, his stock will go up. But he's like 32%. And I stashed him away. I keep him. I just stashed him, see what happens. But I don't know why they can't trade him. I don't understand why no one wants John Wall. I don't get it. Do you guys know anything about John Wall?
I think it's because Houston is also trying to trade Deshaun Watson. And they're like, no. We're not accepting anyone out of Houston.
And I think it's because he makes like $40-some million a year. I don't think that helps.
Yeah, but listen, but Ross is making the key point here, which is as a fantasy player, John Wall may have his flaws, but he's a big time player if he gets the opportunity to play.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like the whole league is like we don't want this guy, or I would think there's a home somewhere for John Wall. I would imagine.
Yeah, probably as a bench spark plug scorer guy. I want to bring up somebody who Dan and I have touted for the last 2 years, and Ross is not as big of a fan, but that's Nicholas Batum. This guy he plays both forward positions. He's only 25% owned, but the guy, he always just puts up solid numbers. He shoots well from outside. He has a good field goal percentage. His free throw percentage is low, but he doesn't go to the line very often, so it doesn't hurt you there.
No, he's a guy, Casey. He hangs out at the 3-point line, and he waits for the pass and he'll shoot the 3-pointer. I mean, he's
also grabbing 6 boards a game.
Yeah,
so
I mean, he's banging.
He's not afraid on
gets
defense
some steals
to get in there
and blocks.
Get the ball.
The thing about Batum that makes it so that he doesn't get noticed is he does a little bit of everything and not a lot of anything.
And he's French too. That's the other problem. I mean, if you're French, you don't get much attention in the NBA. People don't like French people. You guys know that.
Oh, I wanted to ask you guys a question because I've been reading about it the last few days with regards to, if you look at some of the primetime guard scorers, James Harden, Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard, some of these volume shooters who were fantasy stalwarts for the past 4 or 5 years because of their scoring and their ability to get to the line. Apparently in this offseason, and I wasn't aware of it, they made a change to foul calling. And I don't know if you've seen this, but apparently now they're only supposed to call fouls if the shot taken was a natural kind of basketball play shot. So it takes away Harden's ability to jump into the defender sideways and throw it up, or these guys who are running on the fast break and slow down so the trail defender can run into them before they shoot the ball. And so my question is this, like all of those guys who relied on that pretty heavily are suddenly struggling. And so it begs 2 questions, and I'm not sure which is the right interpretation. One, are these guys going to struggle all year because they have to now change the way they play basketball to be as effective as they used to be? We know they have the talent to it. Or are they going to adjust, and by midway through the season, they're going to be playing just as effectively as they have in years past, but you can probably trade for them really cheap in the next 2 to 3 months or month or two until they figure it out because their numbers are going to stay depressed.
That's a great point, Casey. And I would lean towards the latter. I think that these guys are so good at what they do. They're going to figure it out. But if you're playing in, fantasy sports leagues, scoop as many of these players up as you can. They're struggling maybe because of that. I'll also say, it's been a tiring couple of years for NBA players with the pandemic, with playing extra games at certain points. The Olympics were in there as well. So these guys are also tired. And it's not just physically tired; they're mentally tired. I think.
You can't be serious. I'm like McEnroe. You can't be serious.
You cannot be serious.
These guys make so much money to play a sport that if you play the whole game, it's 48 minutes. I mean, Casey Scheinfeld back in Maryland played 3 games in a row, usually at least, and that was like an hour and a half.
It was.
So let's not feel sorry for these poor players driving these expensive cars.
You misunderstand me,
mansions. Why I sit in my studio apartment here in
Let
Palmdale, California, looking at a black and white TV. I don't feel sorry for these guys at all. I feel sorry for myself. That's who I feel sorry for. I don't feel sorry
can tell
for
that.
James. First of all, to answer your question, Casey Scheinfeld, James Harden is the biggest loser with this rule change. I mean, he used to get fouled almost every play, and he shoots like 91% in the free throw, and he's unbelievable. Went to a great university called Arizona State. He's unbelievable, and he's the big loser of this whole rule change. Okay, and they changed it because
Ross. Hold on a second. So my question is, I understand he's the biggest loser from this. Do you think he's going to be able to adapt his game?
Well, he's going to have to. I mean, what choice do you have? I mean, they're not
because right now he's a
anymore.
first-round pick who's playing at like a 9th round value. So is it smart to trade for him now and give up maybe some 3rd or 4th round value with hopes he'll regain it? Or
there's a reason why Dr. Dan Ratner did not take him in our draft. Dan Ratner took him last year, right? Knowing that the rule was there, he could get the fouls, the free throw percentage. Dan Ratner is a genius. It's a genius. Effing genius.
Way too much credit. Listen,
so
I
this
didn't
year,
take
Dan
him.
Ratner, he was like, had no interest in James Harden, and he didn't say why. I knew why he didn't take him because the rule changed. I didn't take him either. I like him too. He went to a great university. I love ASU, and I love the players that comes out of there and everything else. But Harden is his value in fantasy wise. You're Casey Scheinfeld. You're right again. It's way down. It's not the same player from last year. You're right. You're correct, sir.
Apparently, I'm such a genius that I even drafted without even knowing this rule. It's amazing.
You knew it. You played this dumb white guy.
No, really. The reason I didn't draft him is I owned him. Listen, you guys all know out there, fantasy sports players, when you owned a guy and he was frustrating for you the year before, there's no way in hell you're taking him again. If Lillard continues this way all year, I'll never own him again. But
I don't blame you.
Good.
I mean, he's horrible. It's horrible.
He's shooting like 25%. I feel.
Oh, it's horrible. It's so hard to watch.
And that's what I was thinking about with regards to their field goal percentage. Because if they were getting fouls on it, it doesn't count as a field goal attempt, right? So if he misses a 3-pointer, but he decides to land on the guy's foot or kick his feet out so he gets bumped or what have you, it doesn't count against his field goal percentage because of the foul, but he gets 3 points and it helps his free throw percentage.
All right, now listen, we're going to go to our sponsor for a second here. A little bit of a sponsor shout out. Killcliff CBD, the best tasting CBD drink in the world. Orange Kush, Mango Tango, Strawberry Days, the greatest of all time, and Joe Rogan's Spicy Pineapple called the Flaming Joe. Founded by a Navy SEAL, for those who aren't Navy SEALs, it's the biggest no-brainer in the history of drinks. Go to killcliff.com. All right, guys, we are going to move on to, I want to move on to 50% and under. And we may have said some that were 50% and under, but I want to get to some that are more bargain bin that, less people are talking about. Casey, I'll start with you. You got to start.
Okay, well, what about Pat Connaughton from Milwaukee? Shooting guard, small forward, only 25% owned, but he plays 30 minutes a game. So, Ross, as we've talked about it, opportunity is important, and playing 30 minutes, you have it. He shoots almost 50% from the field, 2 triples a game, 5 rebounds a game, 2 assists and a steal. He's kind of like, I do a little bit of everything well, but I'm not. There's a reason he's not a superstar. He's 100% owned because he doesn't. But at 25%, to be able to get somebody like that who can qualify at 4 different, guard, forward, shooting guard, and small forward is pretty valuable, I would think, to your team.
Listen, we know that Pat is always going to be valuable. It can be either gender. Remember, it's just Pat from Saturday Night Live. Can go any. Okay. Now, there's lots of players like Pat Connaughton, and I think they are very worth picking up. Shooting guards, small forwards, they can score points and threes. You got guys like Terrence Ross. He's not playing well so far. I think he's going to be fine. He's often a pretty valuable own. One of my favorite guys, though, is a little bit different than that, which is Danny Green. He hits threes, but he also gets steals. And this is why I have Danny Green higher than those guys. Danny Green is always a sneaky value, always. And the years that I draft him and have him on my team, I'm always thankful. And then I either forget about him or I choose not to go that direction every year. He does the same thing. He's really at the top of my list for these guys that are left over from this point. Ross, who do you got?
I mean, I mentioned, I said, he's like 32% is John Wall. I mean, he's somebody I would pick up immediately if you can and stash him. But as I mentioned before, most of my guys that I mentioned today are under 50%. But like Anfree Simons and people like that, I don't really have anybody else under my. I have guys that are over 60%, but nobody under 50%.
Well, what about Hassan Whiteside, Dan?
That's a forward.
Hey, did you notice I actually owned him in one?
You did. Then you dropped him. I'm not sure why.
Are we doing forwards and centers right now? Or are we just doing guards?
Oh, listen, guys, we decided this last year, so we're doing an amorphous one. It's just you name whatever positions you want. So
okay,
Ross,
I didn't know. Okay, so somebody under 50%, like Darius Baisley of Oklahoma City. He's sitting at 35%. He's averaging like 10 points a game, 6 rebounds. He's somebody that's playing like 32 minutes a game. I mean, he's getting a lot of playing time in Oklahoma City. He's going to get more playing time because they barely have any players that play there. And he was great last year. I had him last year, and he's a guy that shows up every day. He plays a lot of time. He'll get your rebounds and points. I love Baisley a lot. Another guy I like is. I actually have him in our league, and he's just sitting there. Is Jonathan Isaac? I don't know when he's coming back. Casey, have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything. I'm a big fan of Isaac. I listed him in our preseason special as one of my.
I drafted him in our league, and I kind of took him away from somebody else in our league, and got really upset. But
I did. I was mad.
I know you're mad. I apologize. I'll send you some roses. Don't worry.
Thank you.
But Jonathan Isaac, he's like under 40%. I don't know I don't know what's wrong with him. I don't know when he's coming back. They don't have any information at all. I can't find anything. I don't even know what's going on in Orlando. Is it really an NBA team that plays there? I don't hear anything.
Wait, Ross, you're recommending this guy, right?
I'm recommending him, but I don't want to recommend him. He's after
All right,
the
I'm
season.
just saying, you don't sound like you're recommending him.
I'm asking Casey because I know he's a fan because I want to trade him to Casey soon.
I can look him up real quick.
But if you can look him up, that'd be great because I just have no idea when this guy's coming back.
Let me name three others that two of them are on my team. Justin Holiday, often very underrated. He's another threes and steals guy. He's not playing that well yet, but he puts up solid value every time. He's always underrated. Another guy that I like a lot is Lamarcus Aldridge. Lamarcus Aldridge, I think, is not totally done. He's not the Lamarcus Aldridge of old. I didn't pick him up to be an all-star. I know that he's not going to be that, but I was looking on the wire, and this is how I often get my players. You got to know which stats you need. I'm getting killed in rebounds. I'm getting killed in points. For some reason, those are the two categories that I'm really hurting most in. I look on the wire. Who am I looking at? Lamarcus Aldridge. He's putting up decent points and solid rebounds. He also gets some good blocks. So, the
only problem with Aldridge, like I said, he plays like 18 minutes a game.
I know, but listen, I agree with your minutes idea.
Over a quarter a game they play. So
I agree with your minutes idea overall, but this is kind of like a little bit like Matisse Thybulle, but now with rebounds and points. Some guys are just that efficient. Same thing with Nerlin's Noel. You got to look at efficiency as well as those numbers, because here's another thing, Ross. If you're looking at only at minutes and you're not looking at efficiency, you're going to miss on some guys that are extremely efficient whose numbers, their minutes numbers, could go up with injuries.
I agree, and you brought up Whiteside before. I mean, look at his numbers. He's almost averaging like a double-double right now. I mean, he's playing like 16 minutes a game. That's his average right now. I mean, he's like the last game he played, he had 15 points and 10 rebounds. And he play, and they're going to have to give this guy more time to play. There's no way they can't.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I ended up cutting him is not only with the low minutes, I just needed more things, and I think he's kind of a fringe own anyway, and he could lose it at any point. Also,
I don't know. He gets blocks, he gets points, he gets rebounds.
You don't have to argue with me. I'm the one who's talked about all of his upsides.
Well, I'm going to pick him up right now if you dropped him. I didn't know you dropped him.
Sorry. Somebody already owns him. Our favorite our SEC favorite, our favorite SEC guy, I think.
Chris Atwater. Oh, wow.
Chris Atwater, SEC, we call him because he loves the Southern Eastern Conference. That's right. Owns him.
All right, I'm going to mention one other guy, and then I'm going to kick it to you, Case, for a little bit. Jalen Brunson. He's on the cover of this segment for the waiver wire for a reason.
Tell us why.
Okay, so Jalen Brunson, first of all, he's only 42% owned. He hits threes, he scores points, but he also gets assists. He's not just one of these threes and points guys. So Jalen Brunson, this is the kind of guy that can make a difference to your team and stick for the whole year. Could he end up flaming out? Could you end up cutting him? Of course. When we're talking on the waiver wire, a lot of these guys could come and go. That's another reason I like Danny Green or Justin Holiday or Lamarcus Aldridge. They're not likely to come and go. But Jalen Brunson is one. He could come and go, but he also could stick. I think he's a good investment right now. Case, who are we missing?
I don't know if we're missing anybody. I certainly like some of those players you've mentioned. I also like Luke Kennard in the Clippers. I talked about him last week. He certainly is another one who can hit the three, shoot for good percentages, chips in other places, but he's not going to blow you away. But one of the things I always struggle with, and it's a nice segue into what some of the questions I wanted to ask you guys is, how do you, when you're looking at these numbers for somebody who's more of a newbie to the fantasy basketball game? I've played baseball and football for years. I was never a big NBA guy, so I never got into fantasy basketball until late. When you're looking at numbers, you can look at somebody's average numbers versus somebody's total numbers. What is the better metric to look at there? Do you look at, what are the things you look at to determine if somebody's overrated or underrated?
All right, so first I'm just going to highlight, when Ross talked about minutes, that is a big part of it. If you're evaluating numbers and you're trying to figure out what's going to last, if somebody's putting up huge numbers in small amounts of minutes, that might be a draw, because if they get more minutes, it's going to go up. But it might also be something that you hold against that player because they're just not getting the time, not likely to keep up that level. Ross, why don't you weigh in here first? Beyond minutes, what else are you looking at to evaluate these numbers?
Well, you're looking for a player that has defensive skills. I don't know what leagues we're talking about. We're just talking about, let's talk our league.
Let's talk. It's a standard 9-category.
9-category league with free throw percentage, field goal percentage, steals, blocks, points, rebounds, assists. So that all being said, you want a player that's a complete guy that does great in all those categories. They're hard to come by. There's really not many, but you got to look at your roster, right? And you got to say, okay, I got a lot of point scorers, but no rebounders. Like Dr. Dan Ratner's team, he has no rebounders. He has like one guy that gets one rebound a game, and that's it. The rest of the guys have zero.
And you categorize Rudy Gobert.
So you got to know your roster. You got to know your strengths and weaknesses. It's not that hard to figure out. On Yahoo, you can go right to it and look at it. It's very easy. You don't have to do it yourself. Yahoo does it for you. So whatever you're doing and you're thinking, you're saying, I don't have time to do that. Yahoo does it for you. To do it. Look at it. Don't be afraid. Don't run away from technology. So you look at the facts, and then you kind of say, okay, I need help. Let's say an assist. Well, either you can trade for somebody or can pick somebody up. You got two choices. And that's going to happen overnight.
It's a really good point. You got to assess your team. So let's say.
Sure. And I understand that, knowing the weaknesses of my roster. But let's say for me, I'm weak in rebounding. I don't know. I haven't looked at my roster that closely today. How do when I look at the waiver wire, I can certainly, highlight rebounds, and it shows me on the list who's gotten the most rebounds in the last 7 days or 14 days, or who's averaging the most rebounds. But I guess my question is, how do I look at that and say, well, this is the guy I need versus, this guy is fool's gold. I could pick him up, but he's going to hurt me so much that the rebounds aren't going to help.
Well, first of all, you match it up with the rest of the categories. If you're getting a rebound guy, but he's shooting 48% from the free throw line, that's really going to hurt you. Probably not as worth it. If you're getting a guy who gets a lot of rebounds, let's say because one of their star players is out, their playing time is probably going to go down. So you need to know the setup of, is this person likely to continue this? But honestly, Case, it's just logic. You just start thinking, all right, well, what's going to happen here based on what I know? Use the history. So if they're on the same team and they've been doing the same thing over and over, you can pretty much bet that's going to continue. If they're in a new environment, though, that really shifts things, sometimes for the better. With Hassan Whiteside, when he went from Portland when he went from the Heat to Portland, we didn't know that he was going to explode on Portland. Then he was terrible there for a while, and then went to the Kings, and he was even worse. And now, you're trying to measure up where he is all over again. So there are certain players that are hard to predict because they've had unpredictable histories. Try to find the ones that have had predictable histories. I'd rather have. Here's a guy to mention, like Dwayne Deadman. He's on Miami. It's this year. He was on the Hawks. This guy does the same thing everywhere he is. He does the same. He's not flashy. But if you do need rebounds, you look at Dwayne Deadman. He doesn't hurt you in any category, and his value is not going to just evaporate. Does that make sense?
Sure. And one of the things I've noticed, and I just want to add that if you're going to look at average stats, make sure you click on the guy's actual games played, because average stats in the last 2 weeks, they could be incredible. Like, for example, if right now you would go on and you'd look at average stats for the last 7 days and you click, I think of poorly owned people like Frank Kaminsky is one of the highest rated players on average stats.
Frank the Tank.
But he only played one game, and the rest of the week he was sitting out or a healthy scratch. I don't even know. And so that's something I've gotten better at, I think, because sometimes when you're in a hurry, you click on what you need. You see, oh, this guy's doing it well, I'll just take him. Right.
Yeah. I prefer to look at total stats than average stats when it comes to basketball.
Okay.
You can look at average stats in a lot of sports and get good ideas from that. In basketball, though, first of all, you got to watch out for things like that Frank Kaminsky thing, but also it's not factoring in at all how many games played. And right. I think one of the key points, if you're evaluating this, is history. So let's go into, and Casey, I'm going to let you ask questions because you're the simple son.
Well, I have one other question then for you, Dan, segment. Before we go there. And I'll ask, I know where you want to go, but first, you're saying look at total points, but that becomes challenging too, because this isn't like football where everybody plays one game a week.
No. I actually, very good point. And let me rephrase it. It's not that I only look at total stats and not average stats. What I try to do is actually look at both. If you look at both and the person is showing up in both, then you've got something.
Okay.
That would be my top recommendation for that.
So one of my questions, one of the things we had talked about in kind of planning this show was who's over-owned or under-owned, I guess, based on, and not based on the percentage of ownership, but pretty much based on what the statistics tell you. And so so I was looking at some of the numbers, and I was seeing guys who are owned in the 80s in terms of their percentile ownership, and I'm wondering why it's not higher. And so the one I'm going to point out first is Cole Anthony, the point guard for the Orlando Magic.
And let me mention about Cole. I mentioned him last week as a pickup. And because I mentioned him, he went up like 30% last week because of me. I'm taking credit for that.
All because of
Cole
Ross.
Anthony.
Way to go, man.
And I told you to pick him up too.
But he's become kind of like the go-to scorer. Is that just a sign that too many people don't follow day to day? Or is there something in his numbers that I'm missing that has him only 84%?
He plays in Orlando. What else do you want? He plays in the horrible market. No one wants to follow the Orlando Magic. They're a horrible team usually, and there's no stars there. So Cole Anthony, they're down to Cole Anthony now. That's their big star.
So
do you know who he is? I mean, if you did not follow fantasy basketball, would you know who Cole Anthony is?
No, I would because I love college basketball, and he went to North Carolina, and everybody.
Okay, well, there you go. But
aside from that,
no.
He plays in a small market team. No one cares. If you watch Sports Center, they barely mention the Orlando Magic.
This is a key point, though. Players are going to be discounted if they're on bad teams, and in fantasy sports, it really doesn't matter. In fact,
I'm not disagreeing, but for the average fantasy player, they want to watch their players play on prime time. Well, I want to have guys on the Knicks and the Lakers, and I want the guys on big time.
I guess my
teams.
assumption is, and Ross, I agree with you when it comes to kind of the everyday fan of the NBA doesn't follow every team. Like for me, I'm not an everyday fan of the NBA necessarily, but being in Pennsylvania, the Sixers are kind of the team everybody follows around here. So I might not be aware of what's going on in, San Antonio. But you have to imagine if you're a fantasy basketball player enough that you're actually playing in these leagues, you follow the numbers, you follow the stats. So my question was, is the 84% just because people don't pay enough attention? Or is it because there's something in the numbers that I'm missing? He's only shooting 42%. I know that's not the greatest percentage. Is that a reason not to? Well,
Casey, I think it's either people thinking, wow, this guy's a fluke because last year he did not pull those stats out. All of a sudden, this guy is like a whole new player. I think he has more confidence. I think
he was a top 10 pick, so he's got the pedigree. His dad was.
I'm not saying he doesn't, but last year, first year in the league, I think your confidence is a little low. You don't have the confidence like Ross the Boss has, obviously. So he's not. But this year, he's a veteran now. People are relying on him to score. He's getting assists. He's getting rebounds. I mean, this guy's having a great season. I mean, look at LaMelo Ball for Charlotte this year. I mean, that guy, he was great last year and then he got hurt. But this year, he's just doing what he was doing last year.
He's a top 10 player right now.
I mean, he's playing unbelievable. And whoever drafted him in our league is a genius. I don't know who that guy is, but the guy is a total genius.
I think he's the same guy who drafted him last year.
Yep. You're correct, sir.
And you listen, Ross, I give you even more credit for last year because you really nailed that last year. This one we could have seen coming, but you're right. Players get that kind of experience, and then they're going to keep right on rolling. These guys,
and it's playing, guys. It's in all seriousness, it's playing time too. I mean, they're giving the kid a big opportunity to play and playing point guard. So, I mean, it's if you look at the playing time he gets, sure. I mean, the numbers show why he's doing so well.
But let's look at another thing that relates to what Casey's saying. Sometimes the name value means they're going to be overowned. Harrison Barnes is a good example. He's having a great year. Is that going to keep up? No. I can almost assure you it's not. We've seen him enough to know this isn't going to happen. So if I have Harrison Barnes, I'm going to try to sell him as fast as possible because he's good, but he's got this name value because he was attached to the Golden State Warriors when they were winning championships.
Well, he also played in North Carolina too, but
that too. Then you got a guy like Carmelo Anthony. Now, he's an interesting case because he's actually over-owned because of his name and he's under-owned based on his performance. So it's probably evening out in the end. But that's the kind of thing you have to weigh. Or Seth Curry. He's Steph Curry's brother. I'm telling you, that gives him 10% ownership above what.
Well, and also Ben Simmons hasn't played the whole year, so that's
why Tyrese Maxey's a good play too.
Tyrese Maxey is another great example.
We only have a few more minutes left, and I want to ask one more kind of broad question, not about the waiver wire, but more about kind of the strategy of competition through the season, because we're past the draft, so I don't want to worry about the draft. But when it comes to, it's something you see in fantasy baseball a lot of the time, and I don't know how often it's implemented in fantasy basketball. Fantasy baseball, if you're not in a head-to-head league, it's rotisserie, it's compilation throughout the season. But most basketball, from what I understand, is head-to-head. So punting a category. What do you guys believe about doing? Because if there's 9 categories, you only have to win 5 of them to win week to week, right? So because you're 5-4. So let's say you do stink at field goal percentage. Do you just stop looking at that entirely and focus on winning the other 8 categories and let that one go? Or do you believe in always trying to compete in each category?
Ross, I'll let you take this first.
It'd be great to be competitive in every category. I applaud it. If you have the ways and the players to do that, congratulations, you won. Most of the time, you're not going to win every category. You're going to have one category you're going to be very bad at, and instead of trading away your whole team, so you're a little better at free throw percentage, let's say, it's not worth it. I mean, if you're winning what you have and everything's working, and maybe you're winning games 8-2 or 7-3, whatever you're winning, and you're in the top 4 places in your league, please don't change. Don't change it. Don't change it to go after free throw percentage or field goal percentage or rebounds or assist. It's not worth it. I mean, if it's working, don't fix it.
Right. Ross is right about that. If you're winning your matchups 6-3, 7-2, 8-1 on a regular basis, don't change a thing. However, if you are just squeaking by, you're winning 5-4 every week and barely getting by, you might want to try to shore up the 1 or 2 that are easier to shore up. The ones that you're terrible in, let it go.
And the funny thing is people look at points more than anything. Look at, he's averaging 16 points a game, and the guy you're trading me for only has 12 points a game. And idiot, look at rebounds, assists, and block shots. It all means the same as points. For some reason, people don't look at all the categories. The main category for everybody is points scored. And I tell this people all the time, you got to worry about all the categories because they're all equal. They're all in equal value. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So when I trade, sometimes I'll give a player out with averaging 25 points a game or 24 points a game. And if I get a player that's 18 points a game and has 10 rebounds a game and averaging 2 blocks a game, it's totally worth it. So take advantage of that stat. If you want to get a player and this points a game is really high, do it.
No, absolutely. I mean, points are kind of the name brand that everybody wants. They're the Harrison Barnes of categories, and not to pick on Harrison Barnes too much, but it's like if there's a name value, points is that category. Guys, great job with this. I'm looking forward to hearing what people think. We didn't get to all the names I wanted to talk a little bit about how Grayson Allen maybe should get picked up, but I can't get myself to do it. I just can't.
Poor Grayson Allen, that poor Duke kid. I feel bad for him. Unbelievable.
You feel bad for him? Oh my God! This is where empathy starts. I had no idea. Okay,
my goodness.
Guys, great job. We're looking forward to hearing your comments. Please put them below. We want to hear what you think about who we said, who we left off. Let us know what you think. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, hit like if you like what you're hearing, and come visit us on www.mfsn.tv. We've got our football rankings up. We've got our shows up there. Come check it out. We will continue this next week, and we look forward to it. See you same time. That's 4:45 p.m. Eastern, 1:45 p.m. Pacific on Thursdays. See you soon.
Hey, Mishka, this new Kill Cliff Grape CD called The Goat is the bomb.com, baby. Y'all just blew up my drink hole. Woo-hoo! Once you get that goat up in ya, ooh, that's when the magic happens. Man, that escalated quickly. Real science plus killer taste equals Kill Cliff CBD.